Today we're turning to Matthew chapter 26, and if you're able, I'd encourage you to read from verse 20 all the way through to the end of the chapter to verse 75. This is almost 2 pages in your Bible, and it's not a good night for the disciples. It's a pretty tough night for them in terms of what happens and how they act and their behavior. And the verse for the day is chapter 26, verse 31. Then Jesus said to them, "You will all become deserters because of me this night. For it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered." Whew. I don't know if you've ever heard the phrase, winners never quit and quitters never win. It's kind of a sports cliche. You find it in locker rooms and of sports teams and at gyms and that sort of thing. But I don't think anyone likes being called a quitter. Do you? Would you like someone to say, oh, she's a quitter. She's someone who gives up. He's someone who won't see it through to the end. I don't think any of us like to be called deserters or quitters. And yet that's what Jesus is saying about his apostles, about his core leadership team of 12 guys who he's poured his life into and taught and modeled the kingdom for. And now here on this night before his death, he says to them, you'll all become deserters because of me. Because of their connection with him. They don't want to be found to be a part of him and his work and be associated with him and perhaps suffer the same terrible fate. And Jesus quotes the verse, I'll strike the shepherd and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. And this is part of what Jesus' opponents and adversaries knew, is if you take out the leaders, the rest, the followers, often will just fall away and disappear and not be of any concern. So I just encourage you to think about how challenging it was for the apostles that night as Jesus prayed in Gethsemane, and then the betrayal by Judas and the arrest, and Jesus standing before the high priest and being accused. And Matthew 26 ends with Peter's denial. It ends with exactly what Jesus had foretold in verse 31 of Peter denying that he even was associated with Jesus 3 times. And in some of the saddest words in the New Testament, the end of chapter 26 is, and he, meaning Peter, went out and wept bitterly. We don't want to end up like Peter with deep regret and heartache because we feel like we betrayed Jesus and we weren't true to him. So I pray that you and I can learn from the apostles' example that sad and heartbreaking night, and that we can learn to not be ashamed to be known as a follower of Jesus, even in our challenging times.